But let's talk about Bahamian Creole. Let's talk about, from your perspective, how does it differ from standard English, or how does it differ from other Caribbean Creoles? And what to you makes it specifically stand out in the Caribbean, makes it specifically Bahamian?
You know what? We have a lot of persons that have done a whole lot of work that really gives us a good footing for understanding that the way that Bahamians speak is not a dialect, it's an actual Creole language.
Right.
And it speaks to the African origins of this Creole language. The way that we repeat phrases, morning, 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 the way that we kind of cut sometimes syllables short. We tend to really express ourselves in a way that is very unique, but also kind of similar to some of the things that you hear from countries like Trinidad or countries like Barbados, and even to some degree Jamaica. So we tend to say and do things in a way that pays homage to our African heritage. We speak in shortened syllables. We speak sometimes in I'm trying to kind of express it because I'm so excited about it. When we talk to one, I'm gonna just slip into the dialect now
Go
for
for
those
it.
that don't know. So sometimes when we talk, people really think that, and it's not that, it's that. Okay? It's not here, it's here. It's not this, it's this. And we tend to, kind of move the TH and we make it a D. We tend to kind of drop the W, what. And it's so funny to hear when Bahamians are trying to speak British. Because when you jump on British English, jump on Bahamas Air and you hear good morning. And we are now in Nassau. What is Nassau? It's the AUR because they're trying to be proper. And so people that grew up in like the 40s and the 50s and they went to grammar schools or grammar classes, they were taught the British Standard English. And what ended up happening is the Bahamian Creole became a sign of protest. It was also looked at as a lowbrow, broken English that was not respected.
Hmm.
And I'm so happy that we have brands and we have people that have truly embraced the reclamation of this dialect. So you have, let's say, a Telsey Turner in her play Woman Take Two. She makes sure that that dialect is used. And you have a Patricia Glinton McCollis who, through her literary works, An Evening in Guanima, intentionally expresses the power of Bahamian dialect in the storytelling aspects. And so that you have things that people only from Andros in the Bahamas would say, things that people only from Bimini would say. And I ain't even gonna start on Bryland because of all the people, I love me some Bryland people, but of all the people from Lutra is really talking, really scringe. It's be really scringe, oops. And so to know and to love the origin of the language and the way that we uniquely express ourselves, excitement, sadness, um, trapsiness, oh child, the trapsiness, and just to be able to appreciate that repetition of words to exaggerate it is a very African thing. It's something that makes us proud. I want to say a very special hello to Cache Knowles from Eyes of the Bahamian Bay. Yeah, that's my girl. Building a brand off of the reclamation of Bahamian culture and teaching people what it is, especially young people, what it is to speak in Bahamianese.
And I just love the versatility and the differences in Bahamian voices. And since you brought up Eleuthera and Andros, when you're moving through the country, island to island, north to south, east to west, how do you notice that we are speaking differently?
You know what? I think that each island has its own dialect, and then each settlement has its own dialect because we have to remember that you have different communities of people that settled in different places. So for example, in Andros, you have a group of Indians that live there, and so you can go to their settlement, and the dialect there or the Bahamian Creole there is a bit different from the ones that you would find in like Lothar Andros or the ones that you would find in Mangrove Heath. And so you tend to know where people are from based on the way that they speak. The same way, you know, some people in London would have like a Cockney accent.
Mm.
And so you know exactly where they're from. And then you have some that grew up in other places and you know where they're from because it's just completely different. I think it's less of an expression of social class comparatively because obviously Cockney and Standard British is an expression of what people perceive to be social class. But in our case, it's less of a social class and more of a cultural heritage
Mm.
in the way that you speak. We have Mennonites, we have the Mennonites in Andros, and they have their own dialect as well. And so you get an appreciation for the history of a place. There are some words that only some settlements say, and it's almost like it's a password, a hidden thing for you to be able to express those things. And just being able to see that really reminds us that we have common threads that bind us together, but we also have a different hue of thread that makes that unique.
Mm. Yeah. So you know where somebody's from. If they say one word or two words, you're like, oh, you're from here, you're from there.
Oh yeah, Bolo is a Long Island word.
Mhm.
Big Brother, Long Island, straight up Long Island. Okay. And that's just one example out of the many. Like I can't even name them because I'm still learning them.
Mm.
And I'm still learning the origin of many of them. So yeah, but Bola, Long Island.
Have you noticed or heard of any people who protest using this Creole openly, proudly, loudly? Is there a faction of people who still want to speak properly?
So, and it's the notion of speaking properly is something that culturally we, especially those of us born in the late 70s and the early 80s, and now the 90s, are actually pushing back against.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's because there is a bit of, I want to say this the right way, there is a bit of classism involved in the discouragement of young people from learning and speaking a language that is a language. There is a level of erasure in saying that standard English is proper, it is right, as opposed to a language that is also proper and right. And so, even with the curriculum of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the language arts curriculum, we are encouraged to teach students both, but how to use them in the proper context.
Mm.
And so, for formal writing, obviously, you would want to use your British English, depending on the purpose of the writing. And also because the using of the standard English is a way to just ensure that there is a communication that can be understood easily across cultural divides. And then there is also the encouragement of the cultural heritage and preservation of Bahamian Creole as formally spoken of as Bahamian dialect. Because with that, again, you have the history of communities, you have the history of people, you have the history of food, you have the history of cultural traditions and social practices and norms. And
Mm.
then you also have this pride in who you are as a Bahamian based on the way that you speak, based on the things that you say, based on the expressions, and based on how that's presented. We very rarely, when we get on an international space or in an international space, discourage anybody who speaks British English or the American English, or they speak any other international language. We don't sit there and we don't ridicule them or feel as though they're less intelligent because they speak their languages. And so we as Bahamians should not be made to feel inferior by discouraging the use of our dialect in professional spaces as well. It's just how it is used and the purpose for which it is used.
Mm.
And I think in the past, we were robbed of that understanding of the context in which it is used and the audience for which it is used. And so because we didn't appreciate context, we just said, oh, no, you sound dumb. Throw that away. Put
Right.
that aside. We don't want y'all sound dumb when you go around big company. We want y'all sound like y'all have sense, like y'all are educated. And I just be like, well, I educated and they could still understand what I say. And I just need to slow it down a little bit so they can understand what I say. But they get the message. And you see, I really didn't. I did a lot just now. But I find that that comes across extremely well when I want to emphasize a point. I can tell you what a carcinofluorocarbon is in my Bahamian dialect or my Bahamian Creole, and you still can get the message.